to kind of parse into what's going on here that has a really unique perspective. Stanislav Krapivnik, who is a former U.S. Army officer, but is also living in Russia right now. So he has got a really good, unique perspective to be able to see how things look from the U.S. side and the Western side, and how things work from the Russian side and what their thought process is. So we're really eager to have you on. First of all, just welcome back to the show, Stas.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, and just for the audience, I got back exactly a week ago from the Donbas, driving up and down the Donbas and coming back up. So I've driven the north to south length of Russia, most of it, anyways. So
okay, so in fact, even before we get to what Zelensky has just said and what President Trump said as a result of that, I wonder if you can kind of give us a on the ground perspective, is neutral as you can. Obviously, you're in Russia, so you can't be as unbiased all the way, but as much as you can. What is the truth of the claims? Because there are two separate narratives. One is that the Western side has turned the corner, that that Russia is now in a stalemate, that they're not moving forward, they're not gaining territory anymore. And then the other one, that the Russians said, no, we just took one of the main towns down in the center. They're moving towards Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. They've taken territory in Zaporozhye and in Kupiansk and in Sumy, et cetera, and even near Kharkiv. That's two different narratives. They can't both be true. Which one is?
Well, Russia's moving. Maybe not as fast as everybody wants it to move again, but they're moving. And in some areas, they're actually moving relatively quickly. We've heard that Russia's stalemated or Russia's losing territory for the last 3 years. I mean, that's the standard line. Look, just quick rundown. Sumy, Russian forces are about 5 kilometers outside the city. The Russian reconnaissance and sabotage units are inside the edges of the city. They're approaching it through a heavy forest, which, drones don't like branches. And when it's green enough, drones can't see you even to locate you for artillery. So they're moving in from that direction. And the front itself is about 5.5, 6 kilometers out from the edges of the city. A nice 1 hour walk, 1 hour and a half walk. Kharkiv, Russia's moving, but they're not really moving toward Kharkiv per se right now. They're moving. They finished the Battle of Volchansk back in winter, beginning of spring, and now they're moving in to take the northeastern corner of Kharkiv Oblast. Now that's also Kupiansk has been taken fully. There's Ukrainian forces on the edges in the woods, but of the city, but the city itself has been taken. And Russian forces are now trying to start to push through. And that way they'll come in like this and chop off basically about 1/5 of, even more, about a quarter of Kharkiv Oblast. Sumy, by the way, is key because Sumy is the main logistics hub that runs to Kharkiv and runs to Donbas from the north, all the way from Kyiv. I mean, if you look at it, there's 5 major interstates that come in and out. And by the way, that was the route of attack into Kursk out of Sumy, because that also key artery runs into Kursk Oblast. Then we go down to Krasny Liman is taken. It hasn't been announced yet. There's cleanup operations going on, but it's taken. And Konstantinovka is taken, and it's been announced it's taken in the south. So you get a pincher movement, because between that is Druzhovka, Kramatorsk, and Slavinsk, in just on one road, right? You get February, in the February timeframe, toward Gulay Polye. So they've been coming in, and that, by the way, is the last fortified town in that area, right up to Zaporozhye. There's a bunch of small villages, but there's no fortification lines. So they've got a lot of problems. Could they launch some kind of suicide, idiotic counterattacks? Probably, just for hype. But at this point, Russia's got a reserve of 350,000 troops just sitting there, and they've been rotating. What they do is they rotate battalions in. Battalion will do 3 to 6 months online, rotate out, R&R reorganization, but they've been bloodied and they know how to fight, and they move in the next Green Battalion and they go through the same process. So it's a constant rotation to keep the level of combat proficiency up and to keep troops fresh.
Let me ask you now, I'm going to show here a comment by Zelensky here in a few minutes about how he claims that the technology is changing the nature of conflict on the front lines here, but I mean, you'll comment here in a second on what he has to say, but there is no doubt that the Ukrainian side has substantially elevated its technological game with
Oh, yeah.
drones and other
Yeah.
kinds of things. And it is still a fight. It is still slow because the Ukraine side is able to bring lethal power onto the Russian side. So
Right.
what is the scale, if you can characterize it in any terms at all, of the Russian casualties? Because the claim is it's pretty high.
Well, my best guesstimate, I can't say everything I know, but
Yeah.
it's gone from about, and it's area dependent too, but it's gone from around 8 to 9 to 1 to about 3 to 1. And I'm talking Ukrainian dead to Russian dead. I have a friend, just to understand this too. I have a friend of mine who was in a storm battalion. He got wounded in the leg, and they transferred after he got out of the hospital. They transferred him to evacuation, battlefield evacuation, which doesn't mean you're evacuating the living. You're evacuating the dead. You're coming in and you're cleaning up the battlefield. And he said just south of Kupiansk, there was a semi-stationary battlefield, and then the Russian forces pushed through. He said, we're expecting to see a lot of our guys dead. And he's like, no, one in 10 Ukrainians just piled up everywhere, and one Russian guy. And that's because the level of proficiency in the Ukrainian armies collapsed. There's just not enough people, and these guys that they're pulling off the streets, quite literally, a lot of them they get taught the business end of a assault rifle, and that's good enough. And off you go. You're good for one hurrah. Especially these older guys or sick guys or alcoholics. They're throwing everything in that they can. I had another friend who was fighting up in Kharkiv. So the Russian army moved south. They took the high ground, dug in. He said, in front of our fighting positions, we had a 2 kilometer wide field. It's like we never even really fired on the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians would drive up, drop these infantry guys off, and they go charging across the field. The artillery just eat them up. They wouldn't make it halfway across that field. I mean, 2 kilometers is a long way to run across an open field when you're in absolutely full view. He just said, the artillery, just between the 152s, the 120s, the 88 mortars, they just rip them to pieces. And they just come another wave and another wave and another wave. They're trying to get up there to soften the Russian troops up to bring in the motorized infantry. But some of these areas, like I said, he said from there, they barely ever fired. And the Ukrainians out the streets. Bonsai charges, basically, and in a lot of areas. Are you there?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. All right. We had some problems
no
with the signal there.
Yeah.
Lost you for a second. Let's go ahead and play that clip there, because since you've been all up and down the line there and you've seen what's really happening here, would like your honest evaluation of this claim by Volodymyr Zelensky that the nature of the conflict has changed and it's moving it in Ukraine's advantage.
I don't know what I don't know what conditions Putin now wants for this peace. So I think that they are changing in any way, because at the very beginning of full-scale war, he was stronger, and now I think he is losing initiative on the battlefield. I think his army. But that's why I think that because of technologies, because it's not the question now of number of people. People are our heroic people are very important. But now it's not the question of only number of people. First of all, people and technologies. People with technologies. Now I think that we have better steps, technological steps further than Russia. Maybe quicker, because that they produce a lot of different things which are tough, strong against us, but we are quicker. And that's why I think that now initiative moved to our hands.
So have you seen any evidence of that? Has the initiative moved over to the Ukraine side?
They had a little bit of a boost initiative using it's not Ukrainian drones. They were using the Palantir drones that were hunting down transport. Well, the Palantir drones, the first 80% of their charge, they're looking for something that looks like a military vehicle. The last 20% of their charge, they're taking out anything that moves. The areas they did suppress the Mariupol, the Rostov Mariupol interstate. And in the Lugansk and Donetsk, where I was driving, they're all over the place. But the Russian army, evolved into Mad Max style to take these drones down. What I mean by that is they took a lot of these small vans called bukhankas, and then hatchback cars, anything with a hatchback, they've taken out the back ends, mounted basically turned them into technicals. And any pickup trucks, they turned them into technicals with a medium machine gun on it. And that's what's used to escort trucks now, military trucks. You have at least one of these technicals with every single truck on the road. And they're very efficient at taking out these Palantir drones. And the Palantir drones are relatively quiet. These other drones that the Ukrainians use, I mean, I've had them flying in my direction, and you think it's over your head, and then kaboom, it gets taken out by a Panther missile, and it's half a kilometer away from you. But it sounds like it's over your head already. I mean, it's incredibly loud. That's the majority of the drones that Ukraine uses, and most of those are produced in different parts of Europe. The Hornet drone is much quieter, but it's still not silent. And these Mad Max technicals, they're very good at taking them out. Unfortunately for the civilian cars, they don't get escorts. So we were driving, we came in there, I was warned, between sunrise and 9 in the morning, that's when they're really out hunting. They'll take anything out. There was a lot of cars, the roads I used before, they were close to the front lines. We couldn't go up to the front lines anywhere near. They said that's up. Nobody's allowed up there right now. It's too many drones. Even on foot, they're trying to keep the foot traffic down as low as possible. Cars just won't make it. But the areas I've been driving, just where I've got an aunt and uncle that live in Yasenovata, that area between Gorlovka and Yasenovata, it's about 20 kilometers of road, 12 miles. They had 6 civilian cars killed with all the occupants in them killed in just about 5 days. So they just cut all the traffic out. But they're Russian anti-drone units that have come in and are working hard on it. And Zelensky's latest attempt on Moscow and the region to try for the summit, they launched about 420 drones. 36 of them got into Moscow Oblast, Moscow province, which, by the way, Moscow province is the size of Switzerland, and Moscow's in the middle of that. So none of those drones actually got to Moscow. They're all taken out. So the drone defenses are going up pretty fast, and they're improving. But there's a lot to still do. I mean, that road should have been protected. And that road should have been netted. The Mariupol Rostov interstate, but it wasn't. They're putting them up now, but unfortunately, it wasn't before. It should have been. But overall, it's an adaptation process. But I'll tell you this: I've been in Russian drone labs that are not far from the front lines, and Russia's fully reorganized its drone troops. So prior to this, you basically had a drone section in every platoon, in every company. There were different equipment, what volunteers brought in, what these guys could buy on their own, and things like that. Now they've got organized drone battalions with different companies that are specialized in reconnaissance, specialized in kamikaze or grenade dropping drones or resupply drones. So these are very specialized use, and they have laboratories. Or if somebody gets a wild idea, they just go to the 3D printer, design the drone that they want, the drone parts, print them out, test them on the field right there. Then they don't have to go that far. And if it works, the designs get pushed up back to the rear to the factories. They're producing the tens of thousands of drones, hundreds of thousands of drones. So this is from a bottom-up process, which works a lot better than some engineer in a factory going, I got an idea, but I've never been to the battlefield. Let's try this. And then by the time it gets down there and somebody tests and somebody from the company comes over there goes, oh, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's go back. And, it's a very long process. But if you got the guys that are living this every day and they're redesigning these drones to what works for them, what works at the moment, because technology is changing. So these drones have to change. I mean,
and correct me if I'm wrong, but let's just take a snapshot of say the last 6 months. It's my observation from a very great distance, and I'd love your view from up front in the sound of the rotor blades themselves. It seems like there is a very rapid cycle of innovation, counters, new innovation, counter innovation, et cetera, that it's like, if it seems like it's potentially a few weeks or a month at a time. And if you don't make changes immediately, that's like three iterations back. How have you seen that playing out on both sides of the line?
Absolutely. But just so people understand, drones, the drones right now are the machine guns of 1914. Sure, they stopped all movement forward, and then you got airplanes, and then you got tanks, and all of a sudden movement got back up. All three sides, let's get all three sides in Russia, and U.S. developing EMP, large-scale EMP weapon systems based off of microwaves. And the Chinese have already paraded 3 of these trucks in their last military parade. These things could take out their area of suppression, right? Because you've got lasers that can take out half a second. They melt right through a drone up to 5 kilometers. But the problem is they only service one target at a time. And if you've got 30, 40 targets coming in from a very wide area, that drone, that laser is gone. It's not going to be able to handle that many. But now you're getting what's starting to come on the it's in the testing, and hopefully it'll be getting past field testing into combat testing, because China likes to give Russia any new toys too to check out how they work. Obviously, everybody's doing this from both sides. This is an area suppression weapon. This is a weapon system that can suppress anything that's electronic. It doesn't matter if it's flying on radio signals. Doesn't matter if it's flying on cable. It's going to burn out whatever transistors, whatever chipsets it has in it. I mean, you can armor up a drone, but then the drone won't be able to fly, or you won't be able to put any ordnance on that drone. So that's the reality of what's coming down the battlefield. So I think if we see this by the end of summer, maybe fall, being tested in the combat environment, this could be something that will radically change the battlefield back to what it was before, allowing at least limited maneuver warfare. I mean, drones are never going to go away. We just got to face that. But this predominance of drones isn't going to last forever either.
Nothing ever does.
They're still electronics, right?
Yeah. So let's shift up from this tactical and operational level. Let's move back up to the strategic level, because President Trump also had comments today about where the war is going, from that there is more success on the Ukraine side, supported by the West, that has been striking deeper into Russia on more sensitive targets. And Russia is still taking out a huge percentage of them, but there's enough volume that they're still getting through enough and causing sometimes some very high profile strikes, like in St. Petersburg or Omsk a couple of days ago. What can you tell us about the, no kidding, here's the capabilities of the Russian side and why there are being more successes on the Ukraine side?
Well, first of all, if Rubio or Trump believe that this is going to lead to negotiations, they're stoned. I mean, just put the crack pipe down. You have no real concept of what the reality is.
And I'm sorry, I want to take that part separately, because that's really the gist of it. But okay. I want to look first of all at the physical capacity.
Well, here's an interesting point. Yeah, there is I won't call them shortages per se. There is fuel. I mean, I've driven just last week. I got back from driving about 2,500 kilometers up and down the area. In the big cities, there's fuel. Maybe every second gas station has fuel. There is hoarding, one that does have an effect, and there's been businesses that were hoarding and reselling on black market. There's been several major busts on that. There's now they've started limiting, either they're giving out only 20 or 30 liters at a time, or they're not allowing people to bring canisters. There are times, just in front of me, one guy pulls out, pops his hatchback on his Jeep or in his SUV, and there's like 5 big canisters, and he's not trying to fill every one of them up. So that's and there's that. But in the cities, and there is some price gouging too, that I think the government's starting to take notice of. But I came down. On the interstates, there's much more difficult finding fuel. There's still fuel there. You just got to figure you're going to take at least another hour or two standing in lines getting that fuel. But the mom and pop shops and these out of the way places, they're not going to get refueled as quickly as, for obvious reasons, as the big cities.
Right,
where the people
of
are
course.
at.
And but what about the physical capability of these drones getting through? I'd like to look at examine that part.
Okay, just one thing to finish.
Okay.
Russia bought out of fuel. Russia bought 400,000 tons of fuel from India, which is made out of Russian oil. And the Europeans are laughing about it. Oh, I see the Russians have this. Well, the funny part is, yeah, but that's 400,000 tons that are not going to go to the European Union and are also not going to go to Ukraine because the European Union is rerouting that fuel, part of that fuel, to Ukraine. So in about 3 weeks, actually less than that, in about 2 weeks, when the next row of tankers don't show up in the EU because they now have gone to Russia, and India doesn't get a choice. They either sell it to Russia, they don't get oil. It's kind of that kind of position. Yeah, there's going to be a lot more difficulties on the Ukrainian front when they're running out of fuel. The drones, yes, they are getting through here and there. The problem is, I mean, quite frankly, Russia's huge. And when you've got satellite mapping, when you've got aviation mapping from the U.S. In this case, you can find routes of approach. You can always find routes of approach. There's also questions whether some of these drones are not lifting off out of Kazakhstan. We know these drones are lifting off out of Latvia and Estonia and possibly Finland. In fact, Volvo and Lexus, which are two pranksters.
Yeah.
Well, they're not really pranksters. They're best. They're some of the best intelligence people you could find. These guys. I was on one of their shows one time as a guest, and I was talking. I was like, "How do you get these people to just tell you everything? Like, what's your secret?" It's like, there's no secret. They want a monologue. They're like bad James Bond villains. I am so superior and intelligent. Let me tell you this 20-minute monologue about my big plans. All these politicians, European politicians, and some American politicians have done. They just want a monologue. They want to tell everybody how brilliant they are. They just go off, and they said, you just prick them once, and off they go, and they tell you everything. And they called up the military advisor to the Minister of Defense for Estonia, and he just goes off. Yeah, they were pretending to be from the RADA, from the Ukrainian parliament. They're like, oh yeah, we're working everything we can to make sure your drones lift off from our airspace and blah blah blah, and just laid it all out. Thank you. That's Casabella to attack Estonia because Estonia is now part of this war, admitted by its it's not a government official, but it's the military advisor to the defense minister. And it's become obvious for that. So yes, there's issues with that. Vladimir so far chosen not to expand it into that direction, but there's absolute whether because the government knows it or not, I don't know. I mean, there's a 5,000-kilometer border. It's a gigantic border. It's pretty hard to cover everything. So what
impact does that happen? What impact does that have on the Russian population? Because for the first 3 years or so of the war, that hardly ever happened. Just a periodic strike here and there. Now it's becoming more widespread, and some of these strikes are, at least visually, they're huge with plumes of smoke and all this kind of thing. What impact does that have on the population? Because there's one of two things that it's hoped for in the West. One is that it makes the people say, what? This is going on now. We're paying a price. It's not just Ukraine. Okay, Vladimir Putin, in this war and stop all this stuff. Or the alternative is that it makes people say, all right, Vladimir Putin, hit your foot on the gas. We're sick and tired of this. Which way is it happening in the population, or is it a combination?
There are people that are going to be screaming, "Why is this happening?" But the vast majority of people are looking at this as an existential crisis. They've all the Russophobia, it's not even Russophobia, all the Russian hatred that flowed out in 22 and 23. Everybody here saw that. Everybody here heard that. A lot of people were in shock from that. And now they're looking at the West as, these people, and they hear the drum beat of we want war. We're getting ready for war. We're going to have war. We're going to destroy Russia. We're going to rip it into 40 pieces. Everything's heard here. There's no, there's every utterance of insanity coming from these European leaders in particular is heard here. And that people have understood that this is basically a fight to the end. And nuclear powers don't end, or let me rephrase it, nuclear powers don't lose existential wars. They exterminate everybody around them. If it comes down to that, there will be no Europe. There will be no European continent left alive. Whether or not these people understand on the European side, I don't think they do. They've gone so deep down that narrative that they've lost all semblance of sanity. The Kremlin's betting on internal collapse in these governments, but the majority of the people, particularly the military, they want deep strikes. Okay, enough with the beating boy Ukraine. It's time to take the war home to the people that really want this war. You want a war, you'll get a war. That's what the military wants. That's what a lot of the civilians want. Start striking Italy. Start striking Estonia. Start striking Germany. Russia has a prime Casabella on Italy right now, for example. I was in Starobelsk on this trip, went down Starobelsk. It wasn't just 2 buildings, by the way. They took out an entire block, 16 drones, and the recon drones before that. And those drones, I mean, we're talking 4-meter long drones, right? These are airplane-sized, small Cessna-sized drones. They stamped on the engines and everything, made in Italy, made in Italy, made in Italy. And that was shown on the news. There you go, made in Italy. So the Italian plant, that right there, if there's anybody else right now in power, that plant would have been a crater. Probably should be a crater. This is what you're producing is murdering Russian children. The U.S. wouldn't tolerate it. My God, the U.S. would burn Mexico down to the ground if Mexico was supplying, say, Canada, and Canada was doing something like that. So at this point, the population, all it does is piss the population off even more as a whole. And the anger is very palatable.
And so that kind of leads in back to what you started answering a second ago from that last soundbite I just played, whereas Marco Rubio is saying, hey, yeah, we're cool with these strikes deeper into Russia because that's going to cause them to reevaluate and to come to the table on better terms. What do you say?
Well, I wasn't quite sure if Peskov said what he said, but he repeated it to another journalist. This is a war. It hasn't been a declaration of war. But when the government starts talking, it's no longer they're talking special military operation. When the spokesperson for the president says, this is a war, it's going in one direction. Whether or not the West understands that or not. I mean, if Marco Rubio, who admitted to the live press that this is a proxy war of America and Russia, he's admitted that a year ago. Whether he wants to take those words back or not, maybe it wasn't the smartest thing to say to the media, but everybody heard it. I mean, there wasn't a missed concept, and again, the drumbeat is constant. Everybody's looking at it. Everybody quite well understands that the HIMARS are fired by are targeted by American generals. They're fired by Mercs. They're guided in by American satellites, which I was saying that since 23. And then New York Times confirmed everything in December of 24 when they put out an article that flat out put it all out in black and white. These are American generals who are picking targets for the HIMARS, include civilian strikes. And everybody sees this. I mean, you've got to be blind not to see this. Starobelsk, like I said, they took out an entire block of buildings. They took out a private home, a restaurant. They took out an arts center for school children. They took out the dormitory, the administrative / school building that had 2-foot thick walls in it from old brick walls. I'm honestly surprised there's only 21 children that were killed and 40 wounded, a lot of which are invalids now. The damage on that building is just incredible. So everybody sees that. The anger is through the roof. There's the crowd about going on. Maybe it's time to start using nuclear weapons is actually getting louder and louder, and it's not just amongst the people. So there's more elites that are looking at it that way. So Rubio is, if he actually believes what he's saying, he needs to be replaced as soon as possible. He's absolutely incompetent and he's a moron. I don't know how else to put it. He absolutely does not understand his opponents and the mentality of his opponents.
And let's take a look at that line of reasoning you're going down, because that is kind of the hope. That's Zelensky's hope. That is the European Union. Ursula von der Leyen, the day before yesterday, or maybe it was yesterday, said, yeah, we want to keep on the pressure and the cost to Russia, take this home to the people so they see what the Ukrainian side has been suffering so that they'll have a better term of negotiation. Is there any prospect that well, I mean, you kind of answered that just now. You said that it's just making people more angry. But then what is the consequence of that? Because will the Russians actually act on what you said a second ago and strike something in Italy, in Germany, in the UK that's providing these ammunition? Or will Russia just keep gritting its teeth and just say, no, we're just going to grind it down until we finally, a year from now, 2 years from now, finally just collapse and get up to wherever their line of, whether it's the Dnieper or anywhere else? Which of those two cases do you think? Will Russia keep gritting its teeth and never doing what you suggested?
You know, by the way, as far as van der Leyen, let the Russian people know what it's like. Yeah, we knew what it's like from 2014. I mean, my relatives, I'm from Lugansk originally. My relatives have been under fire since 2014. And a lot of people have relatives in that area. So yeah, the Russian people know what it's like. They know what the last 12 years of it was like. And so Ukrainians are finally finding out what it's like. Speech about, our children will go to school, their children will sit in bomb shelters and in basements, caves, and the Russian babies are laughing as they're cutting them up and all that. They used to post all of this stuff everywhere. So yeah, people saw that. People saw that constantly. The Ukrainians thought it was funny. Now they don't think it's funny anymore. Welcome to reality. There's a cost. There's a karmatic cost for everything you do. You want to start bending the knee in front of Melnik and Bandera and Shekevich, you're going to have a cost to pay, and that's the cost. Matter of fact, the hackers, there was a hacker group, MASH, they came in and they got a full list of names from the defense ministry. There's 2.4 million dead and missing Ukrainians right now. Ukrainians, so 2.4 million. That's that and that looks like a pretty realistic claim from the files that they pulled. And you got to figure you add in another 1.5 million invalids. In fact, the craziest thing I've seen is the 500,000 Indians, Pakistanis, Africans they brought in as workforce. There were even photos of Indians helping the press gang the Ukrainians off the streets into the meat grinder. So that's a reality on Zelensky's concentration camp. So this, at this point, this struggle is only going to go in one direction, and it's evolving. And as Zelensky was told, the deal you get today is the best deal you're going to have. Tomorrow's deal is going to be worse. What it looks like right now, anyways, is the Kremlin is grinding its teeth. We'll do the defensive play on the aviation, and we'll continue advancing on the battlefield. So that looks like that right now. But it could be just one major terrorist act away from that calculation changing dramatically. And the Ukrainians seem to be helping and committing as much terrorism as possible. And by the way, they've hit 3 Belarusian buses in a matter of 2 weeks. The first one they hit had a kids' football team on it. I just understand the age of the kids. One of the witnesses said, we just switched the cartoons on when the drone came in and struck it. Killed the wife of the coach who was pregnant, put 2 adults and 4 kids in the hospital. And then they hit 2 more. And they're at the same time, by the way, they're threatening to start doing drone strikes on Poland. So no more MiG-29s, because you got rabid dogs, you got cocaine fiends in charge of a government, you got rabid dogs that are out of